Mildred wasn't merely looking for secrets in the attic. She was excavating a life that had ended too soon. She waded through 40 years of detritus, looking for the comfort of tangible memories, old blueprints, or fishing tackle. She wasn't looking for trouble, but as she shoved aside a stack of yellowing papers, her hand struck something cold and heavy, something that had no place in the life she thought she knew. It wasn't a tackle box or William's coin collection. It was a polished cedar box, heavy, unfamiliar, and wrong for her marriage. It sat there like a dark artifact, locked, deliberate, a physical warning that she was about to cross a line. The lock yielded with a stiff snap, echoing too loudly in the quiet attic. She expected mundane treasures, a watch, maybe war medals. Instead, she found a bundle of letters, and they were tied with a faded silk ribbon that looked painfully, terrifyingly romantic. The paper wasn't office stationery. It was fragile, antique, too intimate under her trembling fingertips. Her gaze froze on the top envelope. The handwriting was elegant, feminine, and terrifyingly unfamiliar. It read, "My dearest William." A chill snaked down her spine, a visceral drop in temperature that had nothing to do with the drafty attic. This wasn't her handwriting. This wasn't her ribbon. It was a doorway into a part of William's life she never knew existed, written by a stranger who spoke to her husband with intimate familiarity. Her breath caught, her throat tightening with a fear she couldn't swallow. Mildred carefully untied the ribbon, the sound of the rustling paper sounding like dry leaves skittering on pavement. She unfolded the first letter, her eyes scanning the text, dreading what she might find. The words weren't just friendly, they were devastatingly emotional. "My protector," one line read, slashing through her composure. Another line pierced even deeper, "You saved me." And then, the signature that would haunt her, a sweeping, elegant love, C. It offered no comfort, only a deepening, suffocating mystery. A cold wash of betrayal swept over her, replacing her grief with a nauseating confusion. Who was C? And why was she calling William her protector? The question hung in the air, a silent accusation. What kind of secret had William kept hidden in this dusty box for decades? The letters cascaded onto her lap, a physical weight of evidence against the man she thought she knew. As she read on, each page spoke of a devotion that rivaled her own, of profound gratitude and a bond that Mildred had never known existed. Her carefully constructed memories of their marriage, the Sunday dinners, the quiet evenings, the trust, suddenly felt fragile, like glass teetering on the edge of a table. The solid foundation of her life was cracking. Her grief didn't fade, it detonated, igniting a restless anxiety that refused to let her breathe. She clutched the letters, knuckles whitening, her mind rifling through every face and memory she'd ever known, searching for a logical explanation but finding only voids. Could the man she loved so deeply, the man who held her hand through every storm, have harbored a double life? That night, the bedroom felt too big, the silence too loud. Sleep was impossible. Mildred lay awake, the image of that elegant seat burned behind her eyelids like a brand. It felt like another layer of her reality was being peeled back, exposing raw nerves in a world that already felt unstable. She felt a kinship with the stories on the news, of secrets unearthed and lives shattered by sudden revelations. Her personal earthquake echoed those broader tremors of trust and revelation. She stared at the ceiling, wondering if her identity as William's wife was built on a partial truth. The sheer weight of the unknown pressed down on her chest, unbearable and demanding. She knew she couldn't simply put the box back. It pulsed with a silent demand for the truth. She needed to look, to dig, to find answers, even if they tore her heart apart. Her first step was desperate but necessary, a forensic audit of their past. She dragged out the old photo albums, spreading decades of memories across the dining room table. She scanned the crowds and wedding photos and holiday snapshots, hunting for a woman who matched the elegance of that handwriting, but C was nowhere to be found. The path ahead felt shrouded in fog. Mildred leaned back, rubbing her temples, trying to force her memory to yield a clue. She thought back to when William first moved to town, fresh out of college, a young engineer with the world at his feet. He had often spoken of those early years, of finding his footing in a new city. A vague memory surfaced, him mentioning a volunteer role, something about a community center for troubled youth. At the time, she had filed it away as just another example of his kindness, a background detail in the portrait of a good man. But now, in the harsh light of suspicion, a tiny spark of possibility ignited. Could that forgotten detail be the key? Her first call was to Martha, a woman who had been a fixture in William's early professional life. Martha was a vault of local history. She knew everyone and forgot nothing. Mildred tried to sound casual, bringing up William's volunteering as if it were a passing thought. But the moment the topic turned to those specific years, The atmosphere on the line shifted. Martha's voice snapped shut, instantly cold, as though Mildred had spoken a name no one was supposed to mention. She praised William's kindness and energy but skirted around the specifics with practiced agility. Mildred felt the conversation hit an invisible wall. Why was Martha, who loved to gossip, suddenly so guarded about a community center? Martha's responses were polished, almost rehearsed. William was simply tireless, she said, her tone a little too bright, a little too loud. Always doing good for people, you know how he was. Mildred pressed, her intuition screaming that something was wrong. Did he ever mention a specific person he mentored? She asked. On the other end, silence spread, thick, deliberate. Martha hesitated, then clumsily steered the conversation back to generalities. It was obvious she wasn't going to talk. Mildred hung up, a knot of dread tightening in her stomach. Was Martha protecting William's reputation? Or was she protecting a secret she had known all along? Martha was stonewalling. The silence on the phone wasn't confusion, it was a cover-up. If William had a secret life, his friends were complicit. A cold certainty settled in Mildred's gut. She was the outsider in her own marriage. She couldn't sleep on a half-truth. If his friends wouldn't talk, the city records would. The next morning, fueled by adrenaline and dread, Mildred drove across town. A map lay on the passenger seat as she hunted for the old community center. But when she arrived, the old brick building was gone. In its place stood a gleaming modern facility of glass and steel. A pang of disappointment hit her, history erased by progress. But she parked the car, taking a deep breath. She wouldn't give up. Institutions leave paper trails, even when the buildings change. She walked into the new center, desperate for a link to the past. Inside, she met Sarah, the current director, young, enthusiastic, and completely unaware of William. Mildred explained her quest, fighting back a blush as she spoke of her husband's hidden past. Sarah didn't know the name, but she was willing to help. We keep archival records, she said. Let me see what I can find from that era. It was a thin lead, but it was oxygen to Mildred's drowning hope. Sarah returned minutes later with a tablet, a smile on her face. Found something. A digitized logbook from the 70s. Mildred leaned over the glowing screen, scanning for his name with a sinking certainty. She found it, but not under donors or a staff. William was listed under crisis intervention, and assigned to him for 3 consecutive years was a single, haunting entry, Cassie Davies. Mildred scanned the case notes, and her blood ran cold. It didn't describe a romance. The file read, subject, Cassie Davies, age 14, runaway risk, severe domestic neglect, suicide risk. The realization struck her, sharp, precise, undeniable. Was this a C? Not a lover, but a child on the brink of death. The revelation landed with a thud. A mentor, a troubled girl. It fit the timeline, but the emotional puzzle pieces didn't quite lock. The letters had said, "My dearest William" and "My guiding star." The tone was so charged, so intense. Could a teenager write with such romantic depth, or was Mildred reading the desperation of a child as the passion of a woman? Her heart fluttered between relief and lingering doubt. She drove home in a haze, the world outside her window blurring. Was she seeing what she wanted to see? Or was the truth hiding in plain sight? She needed corroboration. She called Eleanor, a friend from the old neighborhood who predated even Martha. Eleanor was older, her voice frail, but her memory was unfiltered. When Mildred brought up the volunteering, Eleanor didn't hesitate. "Oh, William," she sighed, her voice softening. "He was a rock for those kids. Spent so much extra time there." Mildred held her breath and asked about a C.E. Davies. Eleanor chuckled wistfully. "Cassie. Yes. A sweet child, but her life was a nightmare." William took her under his wing completely. Mildred's heart pounded against her ribs. Cassie C. Davies. The picture was coming into focus. Eleanor described William going above and beyond, bringing food, helping with homework, sitting with her for hours when she was afraid to go home. This wasn't casual volunteering, this was a rescue mission. Eleanor continued, "He was like a father to her, Mildred. She idolized him because he was the only safe man she knew." The words acted as a balm to Mildred's raw nerves. A father figure. The intense love in the letters wasn't romance. It was the lifeline of a drowning child clinging to her rescuer. The emotional frequency in the room shifted. The suspicion that had poisoned Mildred's grief began to evaporate. replaced by a deep, burning warmth. Was it possible that the secret she feared was actually the greatest testament to his character? She realized then that human relationships are rarely simple. People wear different masks: husband, friend, savior. William had been her dependable partner, but to Cassie, he had been a quiet hero. This wasn't a story of betrayal, it was a story of complex, beautiful human connection. Mildred returned to the letters with new eyes. She picked up the first one, tracing the words, "My protector." Rereading it, the text transformed. "You saved me" wasn't a metaphor for love, it was a literal statement of survival. That I love, see, was the innocent, overwhelming gratitude of a girl who had finally found someone who believed she mattered. The passion she had mistaken for an affair was actually the fervent outpouring of a soul finding stability in chaos. Shame washed over Mildred for her doubts, followed quickly by relief. William hadn't been hiding a lover, he had been hiding a good deed because he was too humble to brag about it. But she needed one final piece of proof. She remembered another locked box, William's work notes. She found the key in his sock drawer and opened the leather-bound diary inside. Flipping through the sparse entries, she found it, in William's steady hand, helping C with homework. "She's smart but scared." And then, a few pages later, talked C out of running away this afternoon. "She needs someone to believe in her. I have to be that person." The diary confirmed everything. It was a consistent narrative of selfless commitment. A wave of pride rose in her, unexpected, overwhelming, filling her eyes with tears. Her husband was a better man than she had ever known. He had poured his goodness into a lost soul, asking for nothing in return. She imagined him, decades younger, sitting on a curb with a crying teenager, offering the same steady presence that had anchored Mildred's own life. Her heart swelled. She didn't just love him, she was in awe of him. But the story wasn't over. Mildred felt a magnetic pull to connect with the other half of this equation. She needed to find Cassie, not to interrogate her, but to witness the living legacy of William's kindness. She wanted to know if the rescue had worked. Was Cassie happy? Using the information from the center and online records, Mildred tracked down a Cassandra Davies, now a woman in her late 50s. The phone number stared up at her. Calling felt terrifying, but necessary. "What do you say to the woman your husband saved?" Mildred took a breath that rattled in her chest and pressed the call button. The voice that answered was strong, clear, and articulate. Mildred introduced herself as William's wife. There was a long, heavy silence on the line, followed by a sharp intake of breath. "William? You're William's wife?" The voice cracked, the strength crumbling instantly. "Ma'am, I didn't have a father. I didn't have anyone," Cassie sobbed. "When I was 14, I was ready to end it all. I had the pills in my hand." Cassie continued, her voice raw with decades of emotion. "William didn't just teach me math. He sat with me on the curb when I was too terrified to go home. He told me I mattered until I finally believed him. I was on the ledge, Mildred. And he didn't just talk me down. He saved my life." Mildred listened, tears streaming, the pieces finally locking into place. The love in those letters wasn't romance, it was the desperate gratitude of a survivor. William hadn't betrayed her. He had been a guardian angel in the dark, keeping strict, honorable boundaries while saving a life. Mildred hung up the phone, the silence of the room no longer feeling empty, but holy. The tears were no longer for a lost trust, but for a newfound joy. The grief was still there, but it was now woven with a golden thread of pride. She understood the full tapestry of who William was. The mystery in the attic hadn't unearthed a sin, it had unveiled a saint. Mildred walked to the mantelpiece and picked up William's framed photograph. His kind eyes seemed to smile back at her with a new depth. She traced the line of his jaw, understanding the quiet strength that lay beneath it. He had left a ripple effect on the world that she was only just beginning to see. The letters in the box were no longer symbols of doubt. They were sacred texts of his humanity. A profound peace settled over the house. Her love for him had not diminished in the face of the truth. It had expanded to fill the space he left behind. She set the photo back, and then she saw it, a faint fingerprint on the glass. His, untouched for years, yet suddenly alive again. She whispered a thank you into the quiet room, soft, certain, and finally let him rest.